Hi there, welcome to the Quantum Leap podcast. I'm really happy to be bringing you the latest interview with a member of the cast of the new series of Quantum Leap, Anastasia Antonia. Anastasia, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Hello, hello.
Hello. Anastasia plays Eva Sandoval in the latest episode, A Decent Proposal. I'll be completely honest, we're recording this a couple of weeks before broadcast, so I have not seen it. So I am really looking forward to getting into a discussion about that and learning more. But first, I just want to go back a little bit and maybe talk about some of your history. Can I ask how you got started in acting? Was this something that you'd always wanted to do?
You know, it really was. I had my whole big dream about wanting to be an actress when I did my first theater play. And I believe I was about 12, 13 years old. It was the first time I experienced acting and just being completely immersed in artistic expression in this way. And I was hooked. I was completely hooked. I can still remember my little self sitting on the steps of that theater and just plotting like, this is what I'm going to do. This is it. I found it. So that's my story.
Amazing. Oh, it's so nice to find that so early on. And was that, obviously, I know a lot of people start in theatre. Was that the dream? Or was it just staying in the creative arts, whether it took you theatre, film, TV? Was there some sort of
I believe I wanted to do movies. I wanted to do movies when I experienced plays. I do like plays, but movies seemed like a more immersive experience. And that's kind of true in ways and kind of not, you know. But I wanted to experience telling stories on a broader scale. And have those kinds of performances that are very grounded, and because the camera's in your face, right? When you're in theater, you're performing a bit bigger. You can still see it in those old movies. All the theater actors who transitioned into film, they're still kind of using techniques to play to the back of the audience. And I was really interested in having the most realistic experience possible as an actress, which means grounded, and camera's got to catch that.
Talk me through a little bit about where that took you. You decided this is my goal, this is my dream. Was the next step acting school?
We had acting school at the theater, right? It was a summer theater, so you were going through exercises. You had your teachers. We were kids doing it, and so that came with the Dune Summer Theater where I started. And I guess after that, I actually wasn't expressing to anybody that I wanted to do it professionally. I came from artists, you know, my family are a bunch of musicians and painters and costume designers and things like that. And that being said, it wasn't going into the arts wasn't going to be like a shock to anyone. I just really wanted to protect that dream because it was mine, and I just wanted to do it. It was more of I'll just show them instead of tell them, because I didn't want to get discouraged in any way either. You know, protect the energy around it.
It's interesting. I wasn't aware that you'd come from such an artistic background. I understand you've done some poetry as well, some modeling.
Oh yeah,
you kind of branched out a little bit as well. Is that a hobby, and is that something that you're still doing?
I loved poetry especially when I was younger. It was one of my favorite expressions. Do I still write? I am writing. It's not so much poetry now. However, yeah, my first love was piano before I could write.
Music as well. Okay.
Yeah. My first love was piano. And then as soon as I could write, I just adored writing poetry. And it was something that I got published at a really young age. It was just something that I just loved, the feeling of flow, like inspiration would hit and these words would come out. And it was such an interesting experience, and it was really satisfying. So I wrote poetry for most of, my life growing up and into being an adult. So basically that dance, I belly dance a lot. I love dancing. I've competed. I've danced bachata in music videos. music and writing was definitely my first loves, but finding acting, I was like, oh, this is something I don't ever want to not do.
Right. So yeah, a very, very broad expression of styles. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then I see you had some smaller roles, and if I'm right in thinking, 86 Melrose Avenue last year is that basically your breakout role? Had you done anything major before that? Maybe internally you feeling like, I've made it. This is it.
Yeah, I mean, 86 Melrose Avenue was definitely a launch of sorts. Yeah, and that was the first time I won an award for acting as well. So that was a crazy, unexpected accomplishment that I was just so honored to have and grateful to have experienced. So I started modeling before acting professionally because I thought that would be a good bridge, a good parlay into the acting world. I was scouted by a Ford Models agent, and I let them know immediately after I was signed, like, look, I love acting, and my agents set me up with the proper agencies for entertainment. And my first ever role that I professionally did was in the movie The Promotion. And my scenes were with John C. Reilly. That was crazy. I'm such a fan of his. I know. Right. And Sean William Scott was in the film, and that was back in the days, like, he was Stifler. He was such a phenomena at the time, and Jenna Fisher from The Office, which is one of my favorite shows. That's just one of everybody's favorite shows, right? So yeah, it was a crazy experience, and just being acting across from people that I highly admired. That was wild. And it was definitely motivation to keep at it. Like, I felt like I was on to something. I went to New York. I don't want to say sidetracked, but I did take some time to do more modeling. And I was doing that in New York City, working for certain designers and things like that. And then but the goal was always to get to LA to continue the acting. And I did. I came out here, and I would say that, I did some indie films, some shorts and things like that. 86 Melrose Avenue came to me, and it was really special to begin with because it was the first ever Lebanese role that I've ever got to audition for, which sounds crazy, but there really isn't any Middle Eastern roles specifically, certainly that a lead would call for, right? No one's really making lead roles about Middle Eastern stories. So I was super excited, and it was an honor. It took a lot out of me emotionally, as you saw.
Yes.
It was a very, very intense. It was a crazy ride. I had a great team around me. I had the support of my co-star, Gregory. I had great people around me for that role, and I really committed to it. For the making of that movie, I shut everything down. Like, I wasn't in contact with the outside world. And I just threw myself in it. And it was really just for the love of it, for the honor of my lineage, for the experience of it, and to do that story justice. And it was crazy to be recognized for that, because I was not going in there expecting that at all.
Yeah, it's an amazing film, and I think all the actors, the whole cast, really seem to be so focused on giving first-rate performances. And I watched it earlier on today, and I was very struck by, as you say, having a Lebanese character as a lead. It's not the kind. It wasn't what I went in there expecting. I knew it was going to be a film about gun violence and PTSD, but it also went to places I wasn't expecting, and it was good to have that representation.
Yeah, I mean, the director is from Lebanon, and she experienced a lot herself. So that was something she really tapped into for the script, and that is it's a unique story to tell, and it was just an honor all around to be a part of that.
Was that helpful having that experience there, or did that up the stakes for you, knowing that you're, I guess, effectively telling the director's personal story?
I think there's a lot of creative. I think there was a lot of creativity that went into it. I don't know that. I think it was founded on her story, but she created something different with it. It actually was more comforting for me to tell this story with someone who personally lived these very deep aspects of it. I felt safer doing it with her, and I felt, she's going to understand this in a way that somebody else who is not in touch with that world could understand it. So it was definitely a plus.
I could spend a lot of time talking with you about 86 Melrose Avenue. That's maybe a whole different interview. I was really impressed with the film, and I'm going to recommend all of our listeners check it out.
Thank you so much.
It was not what I was expecting. I was expecting a good film, but it was it goes to a lot of places.
It sure does.
Let's maybe move on to something a little bit lighter and talk about Quantum Leap. So can you share with me how you became involved in that, how you were cast?
I was cast. I got the audition from my agent. And to be truthful with you, the original Quantum Leap was before my time, so I had to do research on it. I was talking about the audition to a few people, and like some of my family members, like, oh, that was my favorite show back in the day. You know, it was getting like these big responses, like, ooh, this is something, right? And so I got the audition, and it was a really quick turnaround. I booked it, I think, like a week later, something like that. And then the shooting was a quick turnaround as well. I did my research, which involved YouTubing a lot of the old episodes. And I was so excited once I watched the old episodes, how crazy cool that show was, or is. You know, these shows don't die. So that's what happened. I just went in there, I auditioned, booked the role. Next thing I know, I'm on set working with Rachel Talalay, who's the director. I wasn't familiar with who was cast yet, right? There was, like, when I booked it, there was nothing out about it yet. But I was really happy to have met such a cool, funny cast to be involved in this project with.
And I'm just going to mention as well, having spoken to a lot of people from the original series, it sounds like you've had the casting experience that dates back to the 80s and 90s. The amount of people that say, I was cast on Quantum Leap and I did the audition and the day later I was in wardrobe. It seems to be a tradition they're keeping up. Yes.
That's interesting.
That quick turnaround has been a mainstay of Quantum Leap since the original.
Wow, that's good to know. I like that.
I don't know if that helps the experience or not, being thrown right into it.
You just really just leap into the show, I guess. It's just next thing you know, your life has changed.
So can you help me out a little bit? Because as I say, I haven't seen the episode yet. By the time our listeners hear this, they will have done. So they'll know exactly who you are, but I don't. I gather you play a bounty hunter? Is that right?
That is correct. I am a badass bounty hunter in the 80s. Badass. Yeah.
And are you, again, am I right in thinking you're the person that Ben leaps into? So you're effectively playing the mirror image of him?
That's correct. That's correct. Okay. He gets to walk around in my clothes.
Excellent. So I take
Fighting,
it
crying in a thong.
Take it there were two different sets of different size clothes. He's not wearing something that he's stretched into.
There were three. I mean, we had a stunt double too. So
right.
Yeah, there was all three of us walking around that set.
A lot of the time, the actors playing the mirror images were extras. And they were non-speaking roles, so they were hired from extras agencies. You've obviously got a serious acting career growing. What kind of preparation were you able to bring to the role in terms of preparing for the character?
For Eva, I really just meditated to get into her. She's not, I feel like I have a lot of seeds that there was a lot of parallels in my personality that had they have flourished in one direction versus another. I'm not saying I would have been a bounty hunter, but now
you've done everything
clarify.
else. Why not?
She's got a love for action. She's a fiercely independent, tough girl. I've had, how life goes. There's times where you express one side more than the other. And I can definitely relate to being tough and on my own and, a need for action, a love of justice, kind of living life a little bit on the edge. And also she's like fiercely loyal to her family. Like family means a lot to her. She works for her father. And these are all things that I was like, oh, this is going to be easy for me to sink into. And then I get to just turn that up and turn it up a few notches to be some tough girl in the 80s fighting crime. That's an easy sell to me. I loved it. Nice. Even on a personal note, she put her career before her love life. And I can totally relate to that. I had blinders on for me. I was not going to get distracted when it came to starting my career. And there's just a lot of elements of Eva or Eva, they pronounce it both ways in the series, that resonated and lived inside of me. So that was easy. I meditated. What was interesting was getting on set and now taking in Ben's interpretation of what it meant to be in her. So I prepared for what I could, but then it was a collaborative experience on set when Raymond Lee would do scenes and I would have to then add that into it. Right now I'm a man in my body, which was fun as well. And he was really he's a gem of a person to work with. He was so cool, so kind, made sure I was seeing everything from every angle. The rehearsals were on par. And very unfortunate to be working with him because you're not always going to get that.
Yeah, and I guess I was going to ask about working with Raymond and how that ended up filtering into your performance. So it's good to know that I guess he's got that kind of he's created that welcoming environment. You've spoken a couple of times about the fact that it's set in the 80s, which we know, of course. How was that, walking onto the set? And you've done all this preparation internally for the character, but then seeing, I guess, the costumes, the music, the lights, the set pieces.
I loved it.
What was that like stepping into the 80s?
I loved
and
it.
I grew up in the 80s. This was before your time, I guess. So
I loved it. I love 80s music. I love, grew up in the 90s, but the 80s, it was just, a stone throw away from what it was like for me to grow up. That was the foundation to set the tone for the next decade. And I don't know, I just loved it. I loved watching 80s movies growing up, and I loved, there was a rawness there, but also strangely upbeat in the films, like the music was happy, depending on what genre you're listening to, but I do like 80s pop music. I just loved it. There's a rawness there that definitely 90s was also very raw. I miss that. I miss that.
Yes. Same.
Yeah.
I just want to go back a step actually and talk briefly about the work you did with Raymond. How did the mirror effects work? Because there's been a few tricks we've seen already in terms of just doing a straight on reflection through like with a reversed set where you're just facing each other. Some CG work, just standing next to each other and looking in a mirror. How did it come together for you on the day there?
There was the mirror work, but then there was also fun POV, like from peepholes, rear view mirrors, things of that, but the peephole was cool because it was actually Sophia Pernis looking out of her peephole to see who it is. Mm-hmm. And I'm coming to her door as a little more masculine as Raymond, and trying to get her to let me or open the door and things like that. I thought it was pretty creative, and I thought POV is a fun thing. Add was POV in the first series?
No, they never did that. It was when we saw, we'd sometimes see a POV from a distance, and it would always be looking at Scott Bakula, usually talking to himself as he's talking to the hologram.
Right. But it was like a random POV, like a passerby.
It would be somebody watching this crazy guy talking to thin air. So they would show that Scott Bakula was talking to thin air, but they wouldn't show that it's actually somebody else. That's one of the inventive things they've done in this series to allow the lead actors to get involved a little bit more. So
it's cool. Yeah, it was pretty fun.
So are there any stories from the set that you can share? Any anecdotes? Anything? Again, because I haven't seen this, I need a little bit of help and guidance in terms of anything that you think the listeners might be interested in hearing about.
Anything that I think that I know Justin Hartley is a big topic.
Yes.
We can talk about him. It was actually funny. I am not into celebrity gossip or tabloid stories or anything like that. I know This Is Us is a major show. I have not watched it. So when I first went on set and met him, I was like, oh, cool. My husband, not my husband, but my partner's really, he's a good looking guy. This will be great. This is going to be, great for the character. And so then we were talking on set, and he was really funny. And we were getting to know each other, and he mentioned that he really loves his wife. And I thought he was so kind, and I could tell that he really cared about his relationship. And I was like, oh, that's so nice, because it aided to the dynamic in our role development. So then the next day I get to set, and I'm going to the makeup chair, and there I see Sophia Pernis, and I know her from years ago, and I had no idea that's who he was married to. All I knew was that the people on set were kept talking about making sure that me and her name is Tammy in the episodes, that me and Tammy looked far enough apart. I'm like, Tammy, how doesn't Eva Sandoval look like a Tammy? Put it together. And when I said it, I was like, oh, that makes sense, because she's, a North African, Spanish mix. I'm a Middle Eastern, Latin, European mix. And so we totally caught up. And then they caught me up on, like, she's married to Justin and all of those things. And we just had a ball, like laughing and hanging out. But I could not get over the fact that running into her again and then catching up on everything that's happened and getting the crazy stories. And they're just a blast to work on. They're very funny. They're very much in love. And that was a beautiful and funny, weird coincidence on set. And then any other anecdotes, I would say that the crew was really great to work with. We had a hairstylist who always was playing music behind the scenes, on the off, and people would get up there and sing. Raymond was like doing karaoke at some point to a song, and it would be like,
yeah, we've heard he likes to sing a little, yeah.
He sure does. Like, he got just all of a sudden just got up and started singing this song it was just hilarious. I was like 1 a.m. and like some people are bouncing around, and then I pan to the left and some other people are dead, and it was just on the fake set of a city. It wasn't New York, but an LA fake set on the Universal lot. It was just really fun. It was really odd and amazing all at the same time.
Sounds like an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Is there any? Are there any upcoming projects you have? Anything that you're working on right now that you'd like to tell our listeners about?
Yes, Lotus Land it's kind of a similar role to Eva Sandoval. I play a femme fatale. I drug I drug the main characters and steal a very valuable family heirloom. And let me ask you this: do you know who Bun B is?
No.
Are you a hip hop fan?
No.
He's like 90s hip hop.
Okay, all right.
Maybe early 2000s. But he plays this really funny role. He's like the main two characters who are going through the stories. He's their uncle and giving them advice about how to get them out of this hell. You know, I'm running a operation of seduction and thievery, and these guys, I left them in the desert. They're like trying to piece together their lives after their interaction with me, and trying to get what they need back from me. And I don't want to give too much away, but it tapped into like a really fun couple of seedy worlds, and that is that's in national film festivals right now, and it's proof for a series, so that might very likely become a TV series in itself, which would be a ton of fun for me. And other than that, there's a couple feature projects that I'm working on right now that I would love to well, I guess I can't come back and talk about because this is a Quantum Leap podcast.
We'll find an excuse. We've brought people back before. It's fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, come back and talk about that.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it's best of luck with Lotus Land. It sounds like
thank you so much.
It sounds very cool anyway, but also it sounds like, since it's tapping into a little bit of what you're doing in Quantum Leap, sounds like some of our listeners would find some natural enjoyment out of that as well. So
yeah, definitely. That'd be great.
We'll check that out.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you so much for your time.
Well, it was so nice to meet you. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me.